Ready to open the hood? UseTool for the tutorials.
And for car parts, the right idea is the Mr. Auto app. Easy, fast, and with better prices than on the website.
You will find the bulk shock absorbers used in the video exclusively on the Mr. Auto website and through the link in the description. Turn your engine off, pull up the handbrake, pull on the bonnet release lever and open the bonnet. To remove the front shock absorbers, you must lift the windscreen frame to get access to the shock absorber retaining nuts. On this vehicle, you can easily access the nuts by simply removing the seal from the windscreen frame. Then, using a ratchet and a 13mm socket, unscrew the 3 screws by holding the shock absorber cups by a few threads in order to create some play for the next manipulations. In order to change the front shock absorbers on your vehicle, you must lift the front of the car and remove the wheels to have complete access to the suspension system. Loosen the stud bolts on the front wheels, raise the front of the vehicle and put it in the 2-axle stands. We strongly suggest watching the tutorial, raising your vehicle safely before carrying out this step. You will then be able to take off the wheels. Don't forget to slide them under the vehicle. During this operation, you will be working on your car steering system, so you should do an alignment afterwards. You now have to remove the stabilizer link bar. It connects the stabilizer link so that the wheels are always in contact with the ground. To do this, we recommend watching the video How to Replace the Sway Bar Links Golf 6. Unclip the ABS sensor from its mounting bracket. Using a ratchet and a 10mm socket, unscrew the bracket holding the brake and the ABS sensor hoses in place. In order to change this type of shock absorber, you'll need to remove the hub screw. Tip: we recommend shifting to 5th gear and asking someone to step on the brake to prevent the carton shaft from rotating and to undo the hub screw. Then, using a socket wrench and an M24 triple square socket, undo the hub screw, then remove it. Brush the screw of the shock absorber base and spray it with degreaser. Then, using a socket wrench, an 18mm socket and an M14 triple square socket to prevent the screw from rotating, unscrew the nut from the base of the shock absorber. Then remove the screw. Brush the bottom of the shock absorber and spray it with penetrating oil. This will help with the future manipulations. You must now remove the ball joint attachment from the control arms. Start by brushing the 3 ball joint retaining screws of the control arm, then spray them with degreaser. Unscrew the 3 fixing nuts of the control arms using a ratchet and a 16mm socket. Pry the control arm fully away from the ball joint. You can now remove the drive shaft from the stub axle. Prepare a stable, elevated surface to place all of the stub axle once you've removed it. Using a hammer, slide a thin chisel into the opening of the stub axle at the shock absorber base. This will create a slight opening to help you remove the shock absorber with ease. Lightly tap on the steering knuckle to free the bottom of the shock absorber. Finish removing the screws holding the suspension strut support bearing. Hold the shock absorber with one hand and finish unscrewing with the other. Remove the shock absorber.
All parts used in this tutorial are supplied by our trusted partners. These partners also help us create as many video tutorials as possible. Check them out in the description below.
In order to change the shock absorber, you must now separate it from the spring. You can find a description of the tool used in the video, which we think is most adapted to the operation. Careful! Pay attention as you compress the spring. This is not without risk and should be undertaken paying very careful attention. Install the shock absorber in the tool, then tighten the mobile flange against the spring, controlling its position carefully. Check that they are properly held by the locking studs, then slowly compress the spring using the socket wrench and the appropriate socket. Once the shock absorber is free in the spring, you can use a 22mm offset wrench and a 6mm Allen key to unscrew the suspension strut support bearing. In the most extreme cases, you have to use an impact wrench. You can also use the specific tool used in the video, which will make your task much easier. Then, remove the suspension strut support bearing assembly. Remove the shock absorber from the spring. Take the new shock absorber and all the accessories that you will find in the video description on the Mr. Auto site. Before installing the new shock absorbers, it is necessary to prime them by pressing the shock absorber rod vertically so that the gas and the hydraulic fluid are separated. Install the new shock absorber on the spring and unscrew the nut. Then install the shock absorber stop in the support bearing. Then the shock absorber sleeve in the rotating stop. Assemble the rotating stop in the support bearing. Then install the assembly and the shock absorber spring. Take the new nut and start tightening by hand. Before tightening it all the way, make sure that the base of the spring is positioned so that it rests on the shock absorber flange. And finish by screwing in the lock nut onto the shock absorber stem. Make sure it is well tightened. You can also use the specific tool used in the video, which will make your task much easier. Unscrew the spring compression tool, paying attention to the position of the spring on the lower shock absorber support. You have now finished preparing the new part. Sand and grease the inside of the stop axle to help facilitate the reinsertion of the shock absorber. Go ahead and lightly grease the base of the shock absorber. The bottom positioning pin of the shock absorber base must be inserted into the opening of the stub axle. Insert the shock absorber starting from the top part. Tighten the 3 suspension strut support bearing retaining screws partway. Thread the shock absorber base into the stub axle. You can reinsert a chisel into the opening of the stub axle, making it easier to position so that the tab of the keyed connection lets the stub axle screw pass. Roughly tighten the screw of the shock absorber base. Insert the drive shaft into the stub axle. Place the ball joint holder in the control arms. Then screw the nuts back on. Finish off the tightening with a torque wrench. Tighten the nut of the shock absorber base with a torque spanner. Retighten the cardan shaft screw using the previously used technique to prevent the rotation when tightening. Finish up the tightening with a torque wrench. Put the sway bar link back in place. Then screw it back on. Finish off the tightening with a torque wrench. Screw the hose mounting bracket back on. Then clip the ABS sensor back in. Then you will be able to put the wheels back on your vehicle. During this operation, you will be working on the front axle of your car, so it is advisable to perform a parallelism afterwards. Put your car back on the ground and block the wheels securely. Once the vehicle is back on the ground, you can carry out the second hub screw tightening phase by adding a torque angle. The final tightening of the 3 strut support bearing retaining bolts is done with the vehicle on the ground and with a torque spanner. Finalise the tightening of the shock absorber head with a torque wrench. Replace the windscreen frame and the seal. Operation completed.
Hi, it's Theo from UseTool. I hope this video has helped you a lot in your car maintenance. We would be super grateful if you could spread the word so that we can produce even more tutorials. Simply give us a like, a comment, and hit that subscribe button. It really helps us boost the channel and help the whole community. Thanks a lot and have a great one.